I am old enough to have been in advertising through a couple of recessions, and in previous recessions, a lot of times brands and marketers would sort of shift a little bit more towards direct response KPIs and perhaps be a little less concerned about upper funnel KPIs. If that's going to happen over the next year, as people worry about a recession, what advice would you give them as to sort of how they holistically manage across direct response and branding KPIs?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we actually did some research on this in the pandemic that, some of the brands who paused all of their sort of like branding campaigns saw losses in that, sort of baseline awareness months later. So I think it's something to consider just in terms of, what are your end goals, and like, are you kind of being reactive to the market, or is this something that you actually need to do because your budgets are being cut, that sort of thing. It definitely does have an impact on, just like down funnel sales. If people aren't aware of your brand or not, thinking of your brand top of mind, like it's going to be hard to get them to buy. So I think that's something that like we're keeping a close eye on. I wouldn't say we've seen much of an impact so far. We're still seeing tons of kind of big branding campaigns for 2023, but definitely top of mind for us.
You are listening to Power Marketing with Kevin Lee. Kevin and his agency Did It have helped thousands of businesses win through superior marketing, as have his books, articles, speaking engagements, and the E-Marketing Association Power Marketing podcasts. Here's Kevin.
I'm pleased to be joined today by Laura Manning, who's the VP of Measurement at Lucid, which I think is also Cint. So to start off with, what I'll ask you to do, Laura, is for folks who don't know Lucid and Cint, what kinds of research do you guys do?
Yeah, thanks, Kevin, for having me here today. Lucid and Cint are both marketplaces for online research. So Cint acquired Lucid in January of this year, and we're kind of working through all the fun integration stuff. But basically, Lucid was headquartered in New Orleans and was very much a U.S.-focused company, whereas Cint was headquartered in Stockholm. So it's kind of like the European version and the U.S. version coming together, which I think is really great in terms of synergies and, ability to actually reach respondents across kind of the globe. Our products are really focused on the core side of our business on sort of those traditional market research firms, brand equity trackers, copy testing, creative testing, UI, UX research. So really any kind of questions that people might have, want to have answers from their actual consumers or from their customers. My team focuses really on the measurement side of the business. So we're using things like a one-by-one image tracking pixel, server-to-server integrations, partnerships with folks like Samba or iSpot in order to measure the effectiveness of actual advertising campaigns. So we're layering in that kind of media tech layer on top of those survey respondents and kind of connecting the dots to conduct brand lift studies, cross-media research, generally ad effectiveness.
Great. Well, one of the reasons I was super excited to chat with you is you did a session at Advertising Week New York recently where you talked about misconceptions around media measurement. So I'd love for you to share your sort of primary takeaways or primary talking points from that session for those folks who weren't lucky enough to be there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think my biggest misconception I see, or the biggest challenge we kind of run into, is folks really think that this type of research has to be hard, or this has to take a lot of planning or a lot of kind of forethought to execute it well. And I think one thing that our companies have done really well is positioning this type of research with a technology first lens. So we have built this product that we call Impact Measurement, which is truly a dashboard that gives you daily updated, stat-tested, real-time results, which is great in and of itself. But the most powerful thing I think we've done is we've actually built that product on top of externally facing APIs. So our customers, like the Trade Desk, have been able to actually integrate Lucid directly into their platforms, which allowed their customers to kind of, launch us with the click of a few buttons. That's really kind of changed the game, I think, in terms of speed of measurement, as well as just the ease of getting things set up, instead of going back and forth between you and a project manager who's setting up the tags and all that. It all kind of happens automatically on the back end. I made this, what marketing thought was kind of funny. I made this reference at Adweek of, my vision is Lucid as like a pack of gum at checkout. Throw us in the cart with all of your other things you're running across your programmatic campaign, but like it makes things a lot easier in terms of being able to test and learn, being able to try new things with different publishers and with different tactics. This gives you kind of a base point to kind of test and learn directly within the DSPs themselves.
Great. That's really useful. one other question I get a lot when I talk about media measurement and research in particular is sort of how big do you have to be in order for the research to be statistically valid, right? And so within the ecosystem, you typically have like the research and measurement haves and the have-nots. And sometimes the separation is their size, but sometimes it's just them not knowing that, oh, your campaign is actually big enough. You could be measuring it, right? And so is there like a sweet spot where all of a sudden you would say, well, absolutely, this is a big enough statistically valid sample, we should absolutely measure it?
Well, there's kind of two different questions here. So I'd say one thing that's great about our marketplace first approach is that we have a bunch of different panels who are contributing survey respondents to Lucid. So when you think about how that actually plays out in a given campaign, it means we're able to measure smaller campaigns, more niche campaigns. If your campaign's targeted to the state of California or moms with babies, those are places we've really been able to shine. So in terms of like a minimum campaign size, I'd say in the US, UK, Canada, and Australia, we've set about 4 million impressions. So that impression limit is designed to give us 300 exposed and 300 control survey completes, which is the minimum we would recommend in the hopes of achieving stat sig. So there's a little bit of a difference between like us getting enough samples, so getting a large enough sample size, and then the actual ability to measure statistical significance, because as I'm sure you're aware, statistical significance is a factor of both the sample size and the performance. So we can control the sample size, we can't control how well the ads perform, and I think that part, sometimes it's tricky for folks to grasp. We can't keep getting sample until it turns green. That part, I think, we go back and forth with a lot, but really our goal is to get you as much sample as possible so that you can see those statistically significant learnings, even if they're not at the overall level. Maybe you're seeing learnings at the site or the creative level, or even different demographics. Like maybe we're seeing stat sig with women or 18 to 24. Those are the types of learnings that we aim to deliver our clients.
Great. When they're doing the research, what KPIs do marketers tend to focus most heavily on? And are they the ones that they should be focused on, or are they ones they leave out that you're like, oh, wait, you're forgetting to measure something?
That's a great question. So our default product allows up to 5 KPIs, which is great. So you can kind of see across the full funnel, all the different questions, all the different types of, the funnel itself. We have, I think, 9 questions they can choose from. The tricky part is that there's very rarely an ad campaign that is focused on more than 1 or 2 KPIs or able to move the needle on more than 1 or 2 KPIs. So if you're thinking about it, you've got 5 KPIs that are, brand awareness, consideration, purchase intent, affinity, like all these different things. It's going to be really hard to see statistically significant lifts across all of those. So one thing that we really encourage clients to focus on is picking their primary KPI. So what's the thing that matters most to you? And we actually surface that kind of as the primary view in our UI. When they first log in, they see, oh, my primary KPI was consideration, and the lift on that is 3%, but maybe, purchase intent isn't quite there. But it's trying to help remind them, there's one key purpose to your campaign, and we want to show that. We do encourage most clients to include brand awareness, just so that you're starting from a place of, are they even aware of this brand before you're asking them, are they going to purchase a brand? And that's really just kind of like a survey design, snippet, not necessarily something that's like mandatory, but it just logically makes sense. I don't want to be asked questions about brands I've never heard of, personally.
Yeah, I remember 30 years ago when I was at McCann Erickson, and I've dated myself now, but brand lift was one of the favorite metrics, right, that marketers had. Not everyone necessarily always could perfectly define it. They just knew that it was good. So when you guys define brand lift, how do you guys define it?
So what we're defining it as is just the difference between the people who actually saw your ad campaign and a control group who looks like them. So on our side, what we're doing on every single survey complete is we're matching that control group on demographic details like age, gender, household income, ethnicity, and region, as well as the device they're taking the survey on. And then on the back end, we've also built some really advanced propensity modeling, which takes into consideration behavioral and psychographic questions as well. So are you in market are you a category purchaser? Have you purchased this brand before? What types of devices do you have in your home? If you're exposed on a CTV campaign and the whole campaign is with a CTV publisher directly, we don't want to ask a control group that doesn't have smart TVs. So we're doing a lot of kind of advanced work on the back end to make sure that those groups are truly one-to-one. And then the brand lift is the lift up between the two. So, how much more aware of your brand is that exposed group than a control group that looks like them.
Great. Well, that's going to be really helpful for folks who are just
There's
getting
my
a handle
opinion.
on these things for the first
Yeah.
time. One thing that's changed since I was, first in advertising was it used to take forever to run these kinds of studies. And now it seems like with platforms
Some of them
like
still
yours,
do, I hear.
but now with platforms like yours, it seems like you can get your results very quickly, not quite real time, but pretty damn quickly. And the ramifications of that are really huge, because you might be able to course correct, whereas you would never, by the time you could course correct before, it was like too late. All your money was spent.
Yep.
So other than that, what other benefits are you guys seeing as a result of sort of the quick turnaround on data analysis and being able to have learnings come out of things?
Yeah, I would say the first look at results in our platform typically visualize about 3 to 4 days after the campaign goes live. And then we're updating every single day with fresh data. So you actually are getting daily data throughout the life of the campaign, and then it's considered final the day after the campaign. So 1 day later, you can download your PowerPoint, know I'm good to go, cross-brand list off my checklist for the week, it's done. That data being available in real time is really beneficial in a few ways. I think it's helped a lot of our clients to test new things. So is that, you're testing an attention partner, you're testing a new type of media, you're testing high impact ads, anything that you might be doing that's outside the norm, it allows you to kind of compare that to your baseline really quickly. And then outside of that, I think it's really beneficial if you're getting, let's say, added value budget. Your client says, oh, we have an extra, $500,000 to spend before end of year, where should we put it? That kind of data being available throughout the campaign helps you say, oh, Creative 2 is performing the best, and it's working the best on CTV. Let's move our budget there. That data really helps our clients go off something other than clicks or conversions or anything else, especially when you're running a branding campaign where you might not be seeing as many of those lower funnel metrics popping. So our goal is really to give clients that data. You don't have to use it to optimize. You can still look at it 6 weeks after the campaign ended, like you used to do back at McCann many years ago. But that's kind of the idea, is that you have the data, and then it's just another tool in your toolbox.
Great. I am old enough to have been in advertising through a couple of recessions, and in previous recessions, a lot of times brands and marketers would sort of shift a little bit more towards direct response KPIs and perhaps be a little less concerned about upper funnel KPIs. If that's going to happen over the next year, as people worry about a recession, what advice would you give them as to sort of how they holistically manage across direct response and branding KPIs?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we actually did some research on this in the pandemic, that, some of the brands who paused all of their sort of like branding campaigns saw losses in that, sort of baseline awareness months later. So I think it's something to consider just in terms of, what are your end goals, and like, are you kind of being reactive to the market, or is this something that you actually need to do because your budgets are being cut, that sort of thing. It definitely does have an impact on, just like down funnel sales. If people aren't aware of your brand, or not, thinking of your brand top of mind, like it's going to be hard to get them to buy. So I think that's something that like we're keeping a close eye on. I wouldn't say we've seen much of an impact so far. We're still seeing tons of kind of big branding campaigns for 2023, but definitely top of mind for us. And I'm sure my boss is thinking about it often in terms of if things are being paused or if things are, tightening up and as we go into the new year.
So when I think about your platform and the way it's sort of tied into the ecosystems, clearly publishers and app owners play an important role in the way your platform works. So how exactly do they fit into the ecosystem? At this point, obviously they have some of their own first party data on the folks who are there, and that might enrich your data. So how does that work really?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few different ways these types of partners play kind of in our sandbox. I would say one thing that we've done that I think is really cool is we've worked with partners like a publisher's clearinghouse who have an app full of users who want coupons. They've logged in, they've signed up because they want that kind of value exchange. They've been able to add surveys as another kind of tool that they can offer those customers. So getting the actual people who are in their app into our platform to take surveys is another thing that they can kind of monetize. So that's one way that publishers can work with us. I'd say that I think is kind of newer on the scene, is like being able to take that traffic, whether you're maybe you're a gaming company that has in-app games, or different types of partners who have, maybe you have a paywall and you want people to answer a few survey questions before they take a survey. Those things all fit really nicely with us from the supplier side. And then on the actual measurement side, we're working with a lot of those partners directly to measure the effectiveness of their campaigns, particularly, I think, in showing value in those new types of ad units. So if you're at a Disney company and you're, looking at a binge ad, or if you're at Roku and they're launching in Mexico, there's lots of different ways that we can kind of help customers validate that play. And my team is kind of split into two different groups. The one that focuses solely on ad agencies and one that focuses more on that kind of like publisher or partner play. So there's two different approaches, but we definitely work across both.
Yeah, one other thing that I'm sort of curious about is certain demographics or psychographic groups are sort of harder to reach with advertising in general. They tend to have ad blockers turned on, but they may be the core audience for the brand. So how does your team, or other researchers for that matter, deal with the fact that for a particular demographic, a high percentage of ad blocking or a difference in the way they consume the media makes them far less likely to be exposed to the brand's advertising? How do you sort of come up with those panel members, and then how do you have to run a lot more impressions to sort of find those people? Well, how does it change the way you execute the campaigns?
Yeah, I think on the panel side, I think we've done a really good job of having those different value adds. An 18 to 24-year-old male is probably not as motivated by airline flight points as a traditional panel might hope, but he might be motivated to get like an extra life in a video game, or an extra, token that he can spend in X store, Amazon gift cards, that sort of thing. So I'd say we've done a good job in diversifying the actual panels themselves. And then on the survey side, I think one thing that we've been really interested in lately is we have a bunch of customers who are running Spanish language ads in the US. And so trying to figure out, like, are you actually serving those to people who speak Spanish as their primary language? Are they happy to be receiving ads in Spanish? Are you accidentally serving ads to people who speak English and they're mad about it? There's a lot of kind of nuance there, which I think is really interesting. And that's something that I think has definitely come up more in the last year or two, in terms of, both the ads are being targeted to these audiences, but then they're also running these ads in Spanish and trying to figure out, did that actually improve someone's sentiment toward the brand?
Yeah, I have to say, for a while, I can't remember if it was YouTube or somewhere else, thought I was Spanish. And so I was just getting a ton of Spanish language ads. And if it had been German, I might have been able to decipher it, but Spanish,
you're like, this is too hard.
So.
Yeah, it's surprisingly difficult, I think, when you think about the tools that your average marketer has to reach people by language. You can run on certain sites or with certain publishers that reach more of that Spanish-speaking audience. But outside of that, especially if you're thinking about like a broader programmatic buy, it's just much tougher to tighten that up to people who actually only speak Spanish. So I think we've been helping a lot of partners try to figure out like what's working and what's not in that realm.
Right. How's your platform had to deal with the fact that, obviously Safari has been without third-party cookies for a while, and, they keep kicking the Chrome cookie can further down the road as far as when those may or may not disappear. And has that changed in the way your platform's executed the research, or have you had to adapt to that in any way?
Yeah, we're lucky that our pixel is considered in a lot of instances to be a first-party pixel for people who've already been a respondent in our marketplace, which helps us kind of tie that together. But we have built out integrations with a lot of partners that have gone totally cookie-free. So Amazon's a good example. I think we went live with our server with them over 2 years ago. So talk about an early adopter and someone who's kind of ahead of its curve. We send them our first-party cookies, as well as, mobile ad IDs and household IP addresses, other identifiers to kind of completely circumvent that pixel path. And we're working on that with tons of other platforms as well. So just, making sure that the data that we have is coming to us from as many ways as we possibly can. And, we've kind of built this entire framework. We have a really easy onboarding guide. We're like, here's the stuff we can send you, here's what you can send us, and we're kind of off to the races. So I think our technical and product teams have done a really good job of sort of building a platform that accepts all types of data, whether that's, maybe a low-to-me PAN OID or a direct integration with a major TV provider. We're kind of set up to accept, whatever data is available to be sent to us.
Cool. Yeah, that brings me to my next question, which is that the lines between online and offline media have gotten obviously a lot more blurry with CTV, with addressable TV, with digital billboards. And we certainly aren't at the Minority Report level where it'll scan the person's retina and know who it was that saw that particular billboard.
Not yet.
So how has the research industry and yourselves in particular sort of started to weave that into your research methodology?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, we started working with Samba TV and iSpot, who are able to send us that linear TV data that they collect in their platforms to match the Lucid respondents, which has been really successful. Especially on the agency side, our partners have been begging for, a way to tie in more of those like sort of TV metrics for years. That's been really a kind of successful product, and we've actually been able to add that into our daily reporting and the automated tool as well, which was really an exciting product release for us. Outside of that, I would say digital out of home has also been a hot topic this year. That's a little bit trickier though, because the partner has to be able to, detect mobile ad IDs that walk past a certain billboard. And if you're, like me in New York, you walk past a billboard every 2 seconds anytime you're outside. So it's kind of like getting, the right partner who can share it with us the right data. We have tested that pretty extensively with a few different partners, but it really just depends on sort of the scale and breadth of the ad campaign itself. I would say that digital out of home has been much more of a hot topic post-pandemic than we'd expected. I think my understanding is that a lot of those billboards were kind of converted to digital in the pandemic. So there's a lot more digital inventory that's available in the out-of-home space. So we're getting a lot more interest in measuring it than before. But outside that, podcast, all those things can be tracked pretty much the same as, just your average digital media. And then CTV we've been measuring successfully for years. So no real change there, other than I would say that most of our clients still consider CTV to be part of their digital buy, not part of their TV buy. So lots of things to kind of think about as, it's a very fine line.
Right, exactly. So what has you excited about next year? Is there anything coming up, either that within the product or the roadmap, or just stuff that you're excited about with regards to the industry and where the industry is going?
Always excited about kind of our incremental changes to the product itself. This year, we added a lot of sort of our most requested functions, like PowerPoint downloads. Everybody loves the PowerPoint. That's a hot one. Next year, I think one thing we're really excited about is we're hoping to expand our UI to self-service, so allowing customers who maybe don't have the capabilities for an integration to be able to set up and launch studies seamlessly from our platform without dealing with me or anyone on my team, which I think will open up a lot of opportunities just for clients who maybe don't have the resources on their side to do full-blown studies, but if we can, get some DIY sort of cost savings, that allows them to kind of see more opportunities for measurement, as well as taking out some of the sort of manual steps. Right now, we're generating a tag, we're sending it to the client, they're sending us back the survey questions. If all of that can just happen in our portal without, human intervention, that's awesome. So that's something that I think we're focused on for each one, and I'm excited to see where that goes.
Great. Well, thanks, Laura, for sharing all of your insights with me and with the audience. And it's exciting times in research, because if you don't know if it's working, you don't know what to double down on it. So I think that the tools you provide are really valuable to the marketing community.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't have said it better myself, and I think we've made a lot of really big improvements and big changes kind of to the industry over the last few years. So excited to see where that takes us.
Yep, it'll be an interesting year, that's for sure.
It always is.
Kevin Lee's Power Marketing is available on all your favorite podcast networks. Kevin loves helping businesses excel at marketing. Having marketing challenges? Just like Santa in The Miracle on 34th Street, if Kevin can't help you, he'll know someone who can. Find him on LinkedIn, subscribe, or follow.